Okay, well, I'm going to start out and briefly say thank you all for joining us this afternoon. We have the full team from Xperi, and in particular, we have Justine Evan Jones, who is their France expert, who is going to be talking to us, is going to go over the itinerary for the trip and address some of the specific questions that were asked. And of course, Jamie is with us as well. As many of you know, she's our wine club manager and is very involved in trying to organize the trip. And watching from the sidelines is Ryan Pennington, our Chief Operating Officer, and Megan, of course. So Megan's also been very involved in this trip. And so before we really get going, I think Megan, would like to talk to us a little bit kind of about the inspiration for this particular trip.
Awesome. So some of you have actually been on trips with us before, and all three of our previous trips had been river cruises. When we were planning for 2026, we decided that we wanted to go with this really special land tour. And I think there's kind of two reasons. Many of you might have heard Marty or I talking about how Bordeaux was the real inspiration and the roots of the vision of my parents when they started L'Ecole. I remember as a kid, they would get really excited when they would talk about specific families that had wineries of these amazing Bordeaux wines. They loved to talk about how the wines were, their focus was on such high quality. And to be honest with you, my parents really had sort of one goal, and that was to make an amazing wine from Washington State that they could take that bottle and put it on the table with their families and friends and basically say it was world class. And when they talked about world class, particularly Dad, he had those Bordeaux Merlots in mind as his target. So that was a big part of it. We really wanted to concentrate in a specific area. And then the second thing is, while the river cruises have been just really wonderful, I see this as an opportunity to do some things that are even more special. For one thing, the estate that we're staying at is just absolutely beautiful. It's in the middle of the vineyards. It's going to give us an opportunity to do some things like they have beautiful lake paths and around this estate. Marty and I like to stay active. They've got bicycles that you can use that are complimentary. We do yoga a lot, and so you might find us there on the yoga mats. So we're excited to be in this beautiful area and have an opportunity to be able to, explore the local village, that kind of thing. I know that the food experience is going to be phenomenal. On the last night, we actually are going to a Michelin star restaurant. And that last day, we're going to do a comparative tasting to see whether or not my parents, and as you probably all know, Marty's a lot more responsible for the wine than I am. But we're going to do a comparative tasting for L'Ecole and some of the great Bordeaux's that we'll be experiencing on the trip. So it's a smaller group. We're going to have more private and intimate experiences at some wonderful vineyards. And with that, I think that's the inspiration. It's a real Bordeaux focus, and I'll turn it over to Marty to share a little bit more. I know we've got some exciting even wineries that we're going to visit.
Yeah. So one special visit that we're hoping will come together is Vincent Lignac, who is from Saint-Emilion, and their property is Château Guido Saint-Julien, and he actually was here in Walla Walla. He originally worked at Woodward Canyon for a couple of years, then he worked at L'Ecole for a couple of years, and he fell in love with Walla Walla, and he landed back in Bordeaux with his family's estate, and now he runs the operation, but he has a love for Washington State and Walla Walla. And it's really, really fun to visit his small operation and see what they're doing right in the heart of Saint-Emilion. So I think that has been arranged to be part of the trip. I think someone asked the question, how is Washington similar and different from Bordeaux? And as many of you know, a lot of people think that the wines from Washington, they would say, well, it's kind of a cross between New World wines, which is more fruit driven, and older world wines, which is more earth and more structure and more ageability. And oftentimes we would show our wines and people would almost think that they were from Bordeaux. In fact, I think when we won the Decanter World Wine Awards for our Ferguson, about a little over a decade ago now, I was convinced at the time it was because the wines had more minerality and had higher natural acidity and bigger structure. And the judges must have thought it was actually Old World to get the top score. And lo and behold, it was kind of like a Judgment of Paris all over again, where the Washington wine actually looked a lot like Bordeaux wine, but it was from Washington State. So, but it is also very different because Bordeaux is on the coast. It's more temperate. The temperature profile is more uniform. Whereas in Washington, we're pretty far north, so we have colder winters, cooler spring and fall, but really warmer summers. And I think that the key to making great wine is needing a full growing season to get to the finish line. And that's really the case in both Bordeaux and in Washington State. Our soils are different. In Washington, we have volcanic soils and glacial ice age flood silt soils, which is basically ground granite. In Bordeaux, they have, on the left bank, cobbled stones from the riverbeds. On the right bank, more clay and limestone. So there are a lot of differences. They're actually much more rainfall and have more challenges with dealing with mildew pressures than we have. We're very dry. So there are a lot of differences, but at the end of the day, it's pretty shocking how close in character and quality the wines are. So of course, we'll get to explore that a lot more in depth on this trip. So maybe with that, we will try to address the other questions as we talk about the tour, but I will turn it over to Justine. And I think she's got a little slideshow to talk to us about the itinerary.
And if you have questions, don't hesitate to put them in the chat as well, or raise your hand and we'll make sure that we get those answered.
Thank you. Elisa is actually assisting me with the slideshow, so so I can actually talk and not look at my hands. Hi everyone, thank you for joining us today. So I'll try and give you a bit of information about the itinerary, not waffle too much hopefully, and show you some lovely pictures. So I thought we'd start with a map of Bordeaux and the wine regions really. For those who are not familiar, it kind of gives you a good picture of, where the wine regions are. So you've got that burgundy color, the Médoc at the top. And then you've got the Grave area, which is kind of west and south of Bordeaux. There we also have the Sauternes part, where the sweet wines are made. And then on the eastern side, we've got the Libournais, which is kind of Saint-Emilion. And the satellite appellations around it. So the idea that week in Bordeaux is to kind of cover all these key wine areas of Bordeaux, discover them, discover their wines, and have a great time, of course. Let's move to Bordeaux. Let's talk about the hotel first, actually. It's as Megan said, it's a beautiful property. Les Sources de Caudalie. It is in the same family as the owner of Smith Lafitte, and it's actually on the estate of Smith Lafitte. The owner are Daniel and Florence Catillard. They bought Smith Lafitte in 1990. and then they decided to build the hotel in 1999. The way the family splits up the responsibilities, the hotel side now belongs to Daniel and Florence's daughter called Alice with her husband Jérôme. They own Sources de Caudalie. They also own Sources de Cheverny in the Loire, and they've started a bit of an expansion program. They're now buying properties across the wine region of France. Their idea is to have top quality accommodation in the main wine region of France, so people who love wine can come and visit and have a great experience, and for it to be a great base to visit the wine region, and also you know, become familiar with the food. The other part of the business is the spa and the cosmetic brands that some of you might have heard of, Caudalie as well. And that is owned by the other daughter of Daniel and Florence, Mathilde, with her husband Bertrand. So it's all in the same family still. The hotel is at the heart of the vineyard of Smith Olefit. So it's really beautiful property. You know, you've got that great opportunity to do walks in the vineyards, as Megan mentioned. It was built in a way that it kind of blends within the environment. It was meant to be designed with wood, with natural color, and really what the owner wanted is to have a bit of a at-home experience and to showcase the regional welcome and the regional art de vivre. So it's a superb property, and I think you'll have a great time there. Let's talk a bit about Bordeaux now. So on day 2, we'll go to Bordeaux. We'll do a guided tour of Bordeaux. Bordeaux is such a great special city in France. It's quite a rich city in a financial sense. As you can see from that picture, it's a wealthy city. There's a lot of wealth, or there has been for history a lot of wealth in Bordeaux. But it's also a very multicultural city. It's always been very open to the rest of the world. Some key dates you have in Bordeaux is it has been part of the Duchy of Aquitaine during the Middle Ages. And when the heiress of the Duchy of Aquitaine married, she married Henri Plantagenet, who was the future King of England. Bordeaux at that time was a massive part of France and became part of the English kingdom. So you do have there's been a lot of trade between France and England because of that. Obviously, it's also a commercial port, so there's been a lot of trading in Bordeaux, which kind of, you know, has impacted the wealth of the city. You've always had a strong English and Irish community, especially in the wine trade. So it's really a hub, really, and it's a beautiful city to visit. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and it's all very relatively small. The city center is easily walkable. You can wander around quite easily. There's lovely little squares with restaurants, bars, little shops. So we'll do a guided tour on that first day, so we can kind of get familiar with the city. And we'll end the guided tour with a tasting and introduction to the Bordeaux wine and wine regions. And then we'll have a bit of free time to obviously explore independently. In the evening of day 2, we will go to a chateau for a tour, tasting and dinner in Grave, so not too far from their hotel. I'll spend a bit of time on Grave later in the itinerary, so I guess we can kind of move on to day 3 now. Thank you, Lisa. So we'll spend a bit of time in Sauternes on day 3. So Sauternes is the home of the sweet wines. It's made of Sauvignon Blanc, Semillon, and Muscadelle. And it is it kind of south of Bordeaux, but follows the river, which is key to getting that kind of noble rot that you want on the grape to make the sweet wines. The wines in Sauternes were first classified in 1855. That's the major classification of wine, the first one we had in Bordeaux, and it was for the Médoc and for Sauternes. It was created at the request of Napoleon III, and it was created because we had the Universal Exhibition in Paris at the time, and we wanted some sort of guidelines for mainly the consumers in terms of, you know, what to buy. So Sauternes was first classified there. There's 27 cru that have been classified. And so on that day, we will visit two Grand Cru Classés, classified châteaux in Sauternes. We'll go to Château Suduiro for a tour and tasting, and then we'll move on to Château d'Arches, where we'll have a tour tasting and we'll have a dinner as well. Château d'Arches is quite an interesting property. So the vineyards are located by the river, and it's kind of a meeting point of two rivers. The two rivers have slightly different temperatures, the water slightly different temperatures, especially at the end of the summer. And it brings on that perfect condition to create the sweet wine and have the noble rot on the grapes, essentially. It creates that morning fog, which helps with the humidity. And then you've got a beautiful sunny afternoon, which helps kind of containing the spread, I guess, and making it healthy as we want for doing sweet wines. It's a property that was the estate in itself was created in the 17th century. It was owned by the Arches family, but it was seized confiscated during the French Revolution, as many property that belonged to the noble people were during the French Revolution. And it's been then divided slightly, but the estate was classified in 1855, so it's part of the classification. And it's got an interesting philosophy because it is very mindful of the environment. It's very focused on innovation, but with the environment in mind. It's one of the estates that actually reintroduced horses in the vineyards to tend the vineyards in some of the vineyards. So obviously we'll discover all of that on site. I just wanted to give you some information about this one. On day 4, we will move to Saint-Émilion. So Saint-Émilion is this medieval village on the eastern side of Bordeaux. It is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It's got a beautiful 11th century monolithic church, which is one of the largest, it's slightly underground church in Europe. And it's just a lovely little place with cobblestone streets and little cafes and restaurants and bars. One of the key wine appellations of Bordeaux. In terms of grape varieties, we've got the classic Bordeaux grapes, so Merlot, Cabernet Sauvignon, Cabernet Franc. And in Saint-Émilion, we do have usually a higher proportion of Merlot in the blend. There is a classification for the wine of Saint-Émilion as well that was created in 1954. And that is a classification that's revised every 10 years. The other classification of the Bordeaux wines are not revised. They're kind of firm and that's it. Part of the chateau that are on the classification are Château Pavie that we'll visit for tour tasting and lunch, and Château Gadet that we'll go and visit that Marty mentioned. So we'll meet Vincent and his father. It's a great place to visit because it's a slightly smaller place compared to some of the other places we'll visit. It's in the village, and obviously Vincent and his father are really, really passionate. The estate was created in 1844, and I think they are the 7th and 8th generation. So it will be quite a great visit to do, and they're very excited about receiving you as well. Day 5, we'll move to Graves. So the interesting part about Graves is actually you have both the red and the white. Often we think of Bordeaux as the home of red, but actually there's some really fantastic white as well in Bordeaux. The reds are from Merlot, Cabernet Sauvignon, and Cabernet Franc mainly. And like Médoc in the Graves, it's mainly Cabernet Sauvignon. That's the higher percentage of grape in the red. But we also have fantastic whites, and they're made with Sauvignon Blanc and Sémillon. And the name Graves comes from the soil, as you can see on the picture. So it's gravel. And so that's kind of why the region is called Graves. There is also a classification in Graves that was established a little bit later in 1953. And this classification include both the reds and the whites. So we have 16 cru on there. 7 of them are classified for reds only, 3 of them for white only, and the other 6 are for both red and white. The chateau we visit on the first evening on day 2, second evening, sorry, on day 2, will be one that is classified for red only, but the one we'll visit on that day, on day 5, will be both for red and white, because I think it's going to be great to kind of be able to taste the two, I guess. So we will have a visit at Chateau Olivier, and then we'll move on to Chateau Carbonieux, where we'll have a tour, tasting, and dinner there. Chateau Carbonieux is a nice estate to visit. It's got a really, really long history. Actually, it can be traced back to the Middle Ages. It's changed owner many, many times, but it's been mainly renowned for its whites. It belonged to monks of Sainte Croix Abbey for a few years, for many, many years, and that's kind of what they built the reputation of the chateau on, the whites mainly. The other thing that's interesting with Carbonieux is it was visited by Jefferson in 1786, and he did plant an American pecan tree in the park, which is still there today, so we'll be able to see that. And it's an estate now that belongs to the Perrin family, and they're very, very involved, and they're quite, you know, they're often around as well, so it'll be a nice place to visit and to see. On day 6, we move to the Médoc. So the Médoc is the home of Cabernet Sauvignon. So the Médoc is kind of divided into 2 parts. So you've got the northern part and the southern part. So we'll spend day 6 quite on the northern part, more around Pauillac, and then we'll go to Margaux, which is closer to Bordeaux, on day 7. And they do have slightly different history in terms of how long they've been around. So the further north part of the Médoc has a relatively recent history, actually. It was wetland and marshes for a very long time, so there was no vine really until the 17th century. As we're looking to plant more, because the demand for wine is becoming bigger, we then looking for more land to plant the vines. In France, we don't really have the technique to dry lands or drain the water, but it's our friends, the Dutch merchants, who are part of the multicultural scene of Bordeaux, who come to the rescue and help drain the land of the upper side of the Médoc. And now we have, obviously, some of the, you know, fantastic chateaux that we know. So we'll visit a Chateau Pichon-Baron on that day. Is the photo you can see. So obviously we talked about the classification Médoc. So Pichon-Baron is a Grand Cru Classés chateau, which was founded in the 17th century, and it belonged to the Pichon de Longueville family until 1933. There was a little bit of around that time, the quality kind of went a bit downhill. So it was purchased by a bigger company who's really restored the chateau to its former glory. But that's going to be it's a beautiful property. So you've got obviously the chateau there. You've got the water pool that kind of reflects the chateau. There's some beautiful cellars built on the side as well. So we'll have a great tour, tasting, and lunch there. And then on this day 7, we will go to Margaux. Margaux is the village where there's the most Grand Cru Classés chateau actually from the list. And we'll go to Château du Tertre. It belongs to the Arsac family. It's got an older history, being slightly closer to Bordeaux. It's been planted with vine for longer, so it dates back to actually the 12th century. And it's got a great history because the history of owners is quite interesting. One of the members of the Arsac family married into the Montaigne family. So I don't know how famous Michel de Montaigne is abroad, but in France he's a very famous writer. So it was part of the family of a famous writer. It then went to the Ségur family, which is quite famous in Bordeaux. In fact, the Marquis de Ségur was called the Vineyard Prince for a while. He owned Château Calon-Ségur, Château Félan-Ségur, Château Latour, Château Mouton, Château Lafite. So he had all these properties, and it went through different family, but it's got some really kind of interesting little bits of history for all the family it went through, which we can obviously discover on site. Tertre, the name of the chateau translates as small hill, which is it kind of is located on a small hill. And the other interesting things about Château du Tertre is it also produces a small amount of white, which is quite unusual for chateau in the Médoc. But they do plant a bit of Chardonnay, Cabernet Sauvignon Blanc, and Viognier, which they obviously can't label as Margaux because that is an appellation only for red, but that they label as Vin de France. So that will be an interesting thing to discover as well. On that last day, as Marty and Megan mentioned, we'll do the comparative tasting, and then we'll have that fantastic farewell dinner. And then obviously that will be the end of the trip. But yeah, I hope I gave you a bit of information about the itinerary. If you have any questions, feel free to obviously post them in the chat. And I will hand it over to Soleil, who can let you know everything about how to make a reservation.
Thank you, Justine. That was great. I want to go on the trip. I mean, I'm like, it's super interesting. So, hello, everybody. My name is Sole, and I am the guest services manager at Xperi. So if you ever send an email to us or reach out on the phone, most likely you will be talking to me. So I will be personally handling your reservations. In terms of how to reserve is very easy. We have created a website and itinerary that has all the information in terms of the trip. So if Elisa, if you don't mind, just kind of like, okay, scrolling a little bit down, there's like an introduction about the trip, a little bit of kind of like, okay, what we shared about what was the idea behind the trip and what was it that we were trying to present here. And then as well as some family photos of Megan's family. So it's very interesting. Just it's fun to go and look and learn a little bit.
Marty and I, Soleil, actually in 1987 were in France with my parents, and Riley was like 6 months old. So we had an amazing opportunity to taste great wines.
Well, that's wonderful, and it's really interesting to be able to see the photos and just kind of like see a little bit of like the history in motion.
The connections.
Yeah, no, it's very nice. Cute baby too. So, but yes, in this page also we have and the ability to reserve directly. So there's the reserve button that if you just go and press on that, it will take you to a form pretty much asking for your information, and then you can just go ahead and enter your payment information right there, and then that will go and make the reservation. As I said, it's like I personally will handle all the reservations. So when you go and submit the form, it will go to me, and then immediately I will get back to you with your confirmation, showing a statement, answering any questions you may have, all of those things. But in this page as well, further down, you will see a detailed itinerary. So some of the information that Justine shared with all of you, day by day in terms of activities, which areas we're going to be visiting, what is it planned for that day. The group would be staying at the same hotel. So everybody would be together there enjoying that beautiful property in the vineyards that Justine talked about. And then if you go and scroll down, so as we said, day by day, and then there's information about the hotel. And then if you click on the view album, you can go and see some more photos as well of the property. So it is stunningly beautiful. And as Justine said, also, it's like just being in the vineyard and how they have built it. So it's very natural with all the wood, and it's really, very nice. So I think that you will enjoy looking through the photos. And then in terms further down, there's just information about the rates, what is included, what is not included. One of the questions that we do get is about airfare. So we will take one care of you, or actually, Elisa, go a little bit there, stay there. It just would be, we will take wonderful care of you once you arrive in France. So the airfare from the United States to France is not included. We can assist you with reservations by sharing information about a travel agent that works with a lot of our guests. You're welcome to use your points, book directly wherever it is. There's no restrictions there in terms of how do you go ahead and select your airfare. In terms of travel insurance, there's also information there that you can read if you wish to get some travel insurance for the trip, since this is not until 2026. Then there's a map of the property. And then also we wanted to share the possibility of extending your trip if you so choose. And so you can go and extend your trip and go and visit San Sebastian in Spain, in the Basque country, and fabulous food. If you're a foodie, San Sebastian is a dream location. It's just, it's beautiful, it's fun, it's delicious. It's just really a great place, and it would be a wonderful way to end the trip if you want to stay a little bit longer, you're not ready to go back. But again, so all the information is here on the website, super easy. And if you have any questions or anything, you can always send us an email. There's a little chat feature there, but you can also just email us anytime, and we will answer any questions you have. So with that, I don't know who wants to take it from here. Is it?
Sign me up.
Okay.
Amy, have you seen any questions in the chat? Oh, you're on mute, sorry.
No, there have not been any questions in the chat, but we could certainly open the floor to any questions that someone may have.
Yeah. All right.
I think Justine did such a great job covering it. We're like, thank you.
Yes.
Well,
we
if
are
you have any
super-
question in the future as well, feel free to, obviously reach out to Soleil. We're here to answer anything you might have if you think of something later.
We'd obviously love to have you all join us. I think it's going to be one of our most special trips ever, and the connections to the roots of La Colle, it just makes it really even more special for me personally. So it's going to be a really fun trip. Amazing.